On a frigid autumn morning on an Ohio highway, an old man stood encircled by police, hands cuffed tight, his worn soldier's coat clutching a wooden box draped in an American flag. The crowd jeered, filmed, and called him a mad troublemaker, tossing his veteran's cap like trash. They saw a useless old fool, but not his eyes, sharp as a blade. He didn't flee. He carried a secret, an honor, and a story that would bring his tormentors to their knees, begging for forgiveness. The faded silver Ford Crown Victoria, paint peeling, rattled along I-70's slow lane. Autumn's chill in suburban Columbus, Ohio, bit to the bone. Behind the wheel, Harold Emerson, 83, wore a tattered army coat, its shoulders frayed, his gaunt hands lightly gripping the steering. On the passenger seat, a small wooden box draped in an American flag sat neatly, like a ritual. Beside it, a crumpled letter, worn by time, and an old wristwatch, its hands pointing to 9:30 a.m., the hour he had to be at Arlington. No delays, no excuses. The wind whipped across the road, dragging dry leaves against the dividers. But Harold's mind wasn't here. It had crossed over 400 miles to the National Cemetery, where he'd stood in silent salute for decades, every year. Same day, same hour, rain or snow, despite failing health. Because he'd promised those who never came home. A police siren screamed, piercing his memories. Red lights flashed. 2 patrol cars boxed him in, front and rear. A young officer stepped out, tense, hand on his holster. Out of the car. Papers. Harold said nothing, opening the door with the same deliberate calm he'd carried through life. His documents, blurred and barely legible, drew a frown. The car's license plate was nearly unreadable. "What are you running from?" The officer snapped. "These papers are a serious violation." Harold didn't reply. He glanced at his watch again. The minute hand ticked. 9:32. Another officer, younger, bristled with irritation. He leaned in, snatching the wooden box from the seat. "What's this junk?" It hit the car's floor with a heavy thud, the lid cracking open. A silver eagle medal glinted inside, unnoticed. Harold's grip tightened, a flicker of pain in his eyes, but he didn't resist. He stayed silent. Traffic halted. Bystanders began filming. Some laughed. A voice rose from the crowd, old guy playing soldier. A video hit the web within 5 minutes, titled "Geezer Disrupts Highway, Cuffed Like a Crook." Thousands of views. Hundreds of mocking comments. Meanwhile, an officer lost patience. He twisted Harold's arms back, cuffed him, and shoved him against the car. "Who are you? Where are you going? Speak." Harold didn't answer. He looked at the floor where the flag-draped box lay, treated like garbage. No one saw the ring in his coat pocket, engraved with a special ops code. No one recalled a name that once stood at the front lines. That lost a squad in a night of bombs. Amid the noise cars, chatter, jeers, and scornful stares, no one heard what roared in his chest. Not anger, no shame, but something deeper a vow threatened, a promise kept for 60 years, a promise unbreakable. Arlington waited, but the minutes didn't stop, and the people around him were trying to hold him back. The patrol car rolled through the silver fog of an autumn morning, leaving behind golden cornfields stirring in the dawn. In the back seat, Harold Emerson sat upright, hands cuffed before him, his aged gaze fixed silently out the window. His wristwatch ticked, hands at 9:45. Each passing minute, a cut into the vow he'd upheld, unbroken, for 60 years. 2 officers sat up front. The younger gripped the wheel, eyes distracted. The other held the radio, voice laced with doubt. This old guy's probably senile, who drives like that on a highway. But Harold didn't answer, didn't react, didn't rage. Within him, images tore through reality, ghosts of the past rising. Hill 812, Korea, 1952. Snow fell white, blood-stained red. Frank Delaney, his closest comrade, shoved him into a trench as machine guns raked the air. Frank fell, warm blood soaking through, whispering in his dying breath, "Promise me, Harold, don't let me be forgotten." Then Khe Sanh, Vietnam, 1968, leading Ghost 91, a special ops squad, through the jungle under a hail of artillery. 170 lives in his hands. He was always first, silent as a specter, but none saw him tremble except when digging graves for brothers. War faded. He returned to Columbus to a small suburban house, mowed lawns, drank coffee. No one knew the ring in his coat pocket etched Ghost 91, marked a unit few survived. No one knew. Each year, at 9:30, he drove over 400 miles to Arlington, stood by Frank's grave, renewed his vow, no flowers, no press, just a soldier and a promise. Today, the wooden box holding Frank's medal lay discarded on the patrol car's floor like trash. His hands were cuffed, wrists bloodied, and he was late. The older officer in the front glanced through the rearview mirror, frowning. His eyes caught the box, its lid ajar, a small silver eagle medal glinting inside. Harold's face, cold as stone, still as ash. "Where'd you serve?" the officer asked, his voice steadying. Harold didn't answer at once. His gaze drifted to the road ahead, where a sign loomed faintly in the fog, Arlington National Cemetery, 398 miles. He spoke, soft but heavy as granite, "I'm just keeping a promise." The young officer driving scoffed, shaking his head, his tone biting. "Promise to who? Don't tell me you think you're some war movie hero." But the older officer didn't laugh. He studied the medal again, then Harold's aged face, and saw something else. A look that didn't belong in a patrol car's back seat, a presence not born of ragged clothes or faded papers, but of something he'd known, then tried to forget loyalty. In the back, Harold bowed his head slightly. His cuffed hands brushed his coat pocket where the ring lay silent. For years, he'd ensured no one forgot Frank, ensured he never forgot why he survived. I-70 roared on, the wind cold as steel, but within him a vow remained unfinished. And though cuffed, though scorned by mocking eyes, though deemed mad, lost, obsolete, he was still a soldier. And Arlington still waited. The checkpoint's lot buzzed like a marketplace, alive with jeers and roaring engines. And in the center, an old man, cuffed and alone, ringed by mockery. Harold Emerson didn't bow his head nor meet their eyes. His tattered soldier's coat, frayed at the shoulders, fluttered in the wind, a torn flag from forgotten battle lines. At his feet, the wooden box draped in an American flag lay discarded on the concrete, its lid cracked, a silver medal glinting weakly. No one noticed, no one cared. A young officer, face youthful but eyes arrogant, kicked Harold's veteran's cap. It rolled, smacking a concrete post. He sneered, voice loud for the crowd. "War legend, huh? Just a troublemaking old fool now." Laughter erupted, phones rose high, lenses flashing like soulless eyes. A woman in a red coat live-streamed, her mouth twisted in disdain. Old guy playing warrior nabbed on I-70. Like and share, folks. A teen shouted, "What's that junk box acting hard? Grandpa." The laughter spread, sharp as blades, slicing the air, but Harold said nothing. He bent, retrieving the cap, brushing it with trembling hands. Then he stooped again, cradling the box to his chest as if shielding a fragment of a soul. His eyes held no anger, They were deep as old trenches soaked in blood. His weathered face showed no reaction, as if he stood not amid a filming mob, but before a comrade's grave. Another officer, face cold as steel, barked, "Speak what's in the box. Where are you going?" Mute. "Huh." Harold stayed silent. His gaze drifted to his wrist. 10:05. Each minute, a cut, pulling him from Arlington's memorial, from his vow to Frank. In his pocket, the ghost. 91 ring lay still, a special ops code once revered, now unseen, unknown. A man in the crowd yelled, "He's crazy, lock him up." The young officer, fueled by the taunt, snatched the cap again, tossing it to the ground, dust rising like smoke from an unquiet grave. At the crowd's edge, the older officer stood quiet. No filming, no words. His eyes lingered on the metal glinting in the box, then shifted to Harold's impassive face carved from stone. He stepped forward, about to speak, but then the wind rose. A sudden gust swept the lot, dust blinding. The crowd shielded their faces. Vision lost for seconds. Then, a low, thrumming sound pulsed in their chests, like the heartbeat of a steel beast growing from afar. At first, a faint hum, then louder, stronger, as if the sky were tearing open. Heads lifted, breaths froze. A black shape loomed against the gray-blue sky, a military helicopter, sleek and dark, its rotors slashing the air. Wind from the blades slammed the ground, flinging dust, papers, and scattered caps. The crowd scattered, shouting, cursing, their voices lost in the gale, but Harold didn't move. He raised his head. A spark flared in his eyes, unlike before, as if he'd known for years, that this moment was always coming. The checkpoint lot buzzed like a marketplace, alive with whispers and roaring engines, and at its center, an old man, cuffed and alone, ringed by jeers. Harold Emerson didn't bow his head nor meet their eyes. His tattered soldier's coat, threadbare at the shoulders, fluttered in the breeze like a torn flag once flown on battle lines. At his feet, the wooden box draped in an American flag lay discarded on the concrete. Its lid cracked, a silver medal inside glinting faintly. No one noticed, no one cared. A young officer, face boyish but eyes arrogant, kicked Harold's veteran's cap. It spun away, striking a concrete post. He sneered. Voice loud for the crowd, war legend. Huh, just a troublemaking old fool. Now laughter erupted. Phones rose high, lenses flashing like 100 soulless eyes. A woman in a red coat live-streamed. Her lips curled in disdain. Old guy playing warrior nabbed on I-70, like and share. A teen shouted, "What's that junk box acting hard, Grandpa?" The laughter spread, cutting like blades, slicing the air, but Harold said nothing. He bent down, retrieving the cap and using it with trembling hands. Then he stooped again, cradling the box to his chest as if shielding a piece of a soul. His eyes held no rage, deep as old trenches soaked in blood. They carried only a quiet pain. His weathered face showed no reaction, as if he stood not amid a filming mob, but before a comrade's grave. Another officer, face cold as steel, barked, "Speak! What's this box? Where are you going?" Mute. "Huh?" Harold stayed silent. His gaze drifted to his wristwatch. 10:05. Each minute, a slash, pulling him from Arlington's memorial, from his vow to Frank. In his coat pocket, the ghost, 91 ring lay still, a forgotten ember in stone, once a code that stilled soldiers' breaths, now unseen, unknown. A man in the crowd yelled, "He's crazy, lock him up." The young officer, fueled by the taunt, snatched the cap again, tossing it to the ground, dust rising like smoke from an unquiet grave. At the crowd's edge, the older officer stood silent. No filming, no words. His eyes lingered on the metal in the cracked box, then shifted to Harold's impassive face, carved from stone. He stepped forward, about to speak, but then the wind surged. A sudden gust swept the lot, stirring blinding dust and forcing the crowd to shield their faces. For seconds, no one saw. Then, a low, thrumming sound, pulsing in the chest like a steel beast's heart, rolled in from afar. At first, a faint hum. But it grew louder, stronger, as if the sky were tearing open. Heads lifted, breaths froze. A black shape loomed against the gray-blue sky. A military helicopter, sleek and dark, its rotors slashing the air. Wind from the blades slammed the pavement, scattering dust, papers, and tossed caps. The crowd scattered shouts, calls, and curses swallowed in the gale. But Harold didn't move. He raised his head, a spark flared in his eyes, unlike before. As if he'd known for years, that this moment would come. The I-70 checkpoint lingered in fine dust, and the fading rumble of the Blackhawk's ascent, the autumn wind chilling to the bone. No one spoke. Where Harold Emerson had stood, the space remained empty, yet his silhouette a tattered soldier's coat. Clutching the flag-draped wooden box seemed to haunt the air. A void none dared cross. A silence none dared break. The 4-star general, before boarding the helicopter, turned back. His face was stern, his voice a deep command, and he carved each word into the thick air. "You just touched a legend. Know who he is." The crowd held its breath. Then he continued, voice low but forceful, stilling all that was Captain Harold Emerson, commander of Ghost 91, the man who kept 170 soldiers alive through 72 hours of hellfire at Khe Sanh, nominated for general. He refused to stay on the front lines, where his men needed him. No one moved. Some raised phones, but trembling hands couldn't film. The general stepped closer, eyes locked on the young officer who tossed Harold's cap, his voice softening, heavy as stone. He received a medal from President Reagan. Never wore it. His name's on the Pentagon's Red List priority escort to Arlington every year. On time. That box you called trash holds Frank Delaney's medal, who died so Harold could live, and for 60 years he's kept his vow. The young officer froze, hands limp, eyes welling. He stammered, childlike, I didn't know. The woman, live-streaming, covered her face, sobbing, her phone clattering to the ground, unheeded. The older officer, who'd hesitated, bowed his head, clutching his cap as if begging forgiveness from a hero he should have recognized. A bystander, voice choked, muttered, "We were wrong, all wrong." No one laughed, no one spoke, no one filmed. Every gaze fixed on the empty space where Harold had been cuffed, mocked. Now, it held only dust and an invisible mark the crowd felt. The older officer stood silent, whispering to a colleague, "I saw that medal in the Army Museum. I stood before it, never thought I'd meet its bearer in real life." Harold, aboard the helicopter, knew nothing of the scene below. He sat still, clutching the crumpled letter, eyes gazing through the window toward the horizon, where Arlington waited. In his pocket, the Ghost 91 ring lay heavy, silent as a scar that never faded. He didn't cry, didn't smile. He whispered, barely audible, as if to an old friend long gone, "I'm coming to keep my promise, not for anyone's boo." The words, unheard, weighed like granite, like the years he'd lived quietly, never forsaking what mattered. I-70 stirred back to life, but the checkpoint was forever changed. The crowd dispersed, no one speaking loudly, no one rushing. Silence was their only atonement. Harold needed no one to know his name. No thanks. He needed only 9:30 the right day. Frank's grave. And this time, the Army ensured he wouldn't be late. Beneath the pale morning sun at Arlington National Cemetery, rows of white headstones stretched like untold stories, silent under a gentle breeze, no sirens, no military horns, only the whisper of history unfolding. Harold Emerson stood still, his faded soldier's coat fluttering, before him. A simple headstone read, Frank Delaney, KIA, 1952. His fingers brushed the name as if touching a memory that never faded. In his hands, the flag-draped wooden box held Frank's medal, unmarred by the indignity of I-70. No trace of scorn remained, only Harold and a vow fulfilled. The four-star general stood back, silent, a few steps away, honoring the sacred moment. Beside the grave, an old iron chair bore a weathered inscription, for those who never needed an invitation. Harold sat slowly, clutching his crumpled letter, his gaze not on the stone but beyond, to frozen nights on Hill 812 blood-soaked snow, and Frank's dying whisper urging him to live on. He said nothing, needed no words. At 09:32 the memorial began, and for 60 years, Harold was there on time, unwavering, never breaking his oath. Hundreds of miles away, on I-70 where he'd been cuffed and mocked, a small plaque stood unassuming. It bore. He was on time, we weren't. The checkpoint lowered its flag for a day at the Pentagon's quiet request, no press, just a wordless bow. Late for a man who'd asked for none. The young officer who'd kicked his cap sent a handwritten letter to Harold's old unit, voice breaking. I'm sorry, I was wrong. It went unanswered, at Arlington. Harold rose, placing the box before Frank's grave. He nodded to the general, not as one receiving honors, but as a soldier reporting duty done. He turned away, no one called him back, no one dared. His frail silhouette blended with the white stones, bathed in sunlight. In his pocket, the Ghost 91 ring, the emblem of his elite unit, lay heavy, not gleaming but enduring, like an era. And his eyes, the eyes of a survivor, not living for himself, but to remember, to carry the memory of those left behind. The world might forget his name. The Army never would. As he vanished, the iron chair by Frank's grave remained untouched. All knew it wasn't for ordinary men. It was for those who kept their vows not for glory, but for names left in silence. I-70 pulsed with life, but drivers passing the checkpoint glanced at the plaque, sensing a lesson unspoken. Some heroes need no fame. Their promises outlast time. Harold, somewhere on the road home, carried that gaze, the gaze of Ghost Captain, who kept his oath for 60 years and never failed. As faint sunlight cloaked Arlington's headstones, the iron chair by Frank Delaney's grave stood, etched with Harold Emerson's vow, a silent soldier who never missed his call. I-70, where he was shamed, now bears a plaque, reminding all that honor may be misjudged but never forgotten. Harold, with Ghost Captain's eyes, left a truth unspoken. A vow outweighs any jeer. If this story moved you, share it, as men like Harold live on. Subscribe to our channel for more tales of loyalty and respect. In the comments, tell us who taught you about promises unbroken. Each story you share is a breeze, keeping their flame alive.